Good afternoon. Chris Wallace here, sometimes advisor for those willing to widen their perspective, bringing you another message of power and love in service of meaning and freedom. If I could have just a wee moment of your time, I'd like to share something with you that I think that you're going to appreciate. First, I'd like to say I love how men are avid consumers of information, how many of you are frequent visitors to online chats and channels, trying to discover what makes members of the opposite sex tick, and indeed each other. I think it's a noble pursuit. We should seek to understand one another. And I'll get to the reason for today's post in a moment, but first let me say one more thing. Men and women have been banding together since the beginning to take advantage of each other's strengths and to shore up each other's weaknesses. No one makes it alone, and the human race succeeds through its singular secret to success. That's cooperation. No one gets ahead without others. So the contentious saying that I'd like to address today is this one: you can't negotiate desire. Or often it's said as you can't negotiate attraction. And the manosphere experts would tell you that this can't be done. The truism is that attraction is either there or it's not. And I say that they're sadly mistaken, because nothing in life is so black and white. In fact, you can negotiate just about anything. Anything. Take it from me, advisor to men. Like Tony the restaurateur told me many years ago in another lifetime, he said, Chris, anybody can be walked. It's just a question of approach. So I say, if your mentality says you can't negotiate attraction, you are walking yourself probably out the door. You have ostracized yourself. And gentlemen, ostracism is the real scourge of mankind. You might say, well, Wally, in matters of the heart, things are different. And again, I get where you're coming from, but I think it's the wrong mindset. What the saying says is that negotiation doesn't count here. Well, including the word negotiate in the advice itself. Have you noticed that? I think this is a big tell, my friends. It's no coincidence the word is used. And it always comes as you can't negotiate either attraction or desire. Has anybody even noticed that can't means won't? So let's be real. If it's adopted, what you're really saying is that you won't negotiate desire. That's a different thing. When in fact, all relationships involve negotiation. All relationships. There's a difference between saying you can't negotiate desire and I won't negotiate desire. Any relationship outside your family of origin is a negotiation. Whereas with family, it was brokered by the heavens, let's say. You didn't have a choice, and neither did they. And yet, you were accepted as a baby and grew in whatever imperfect environment your family provided. So now, you're an adult. And let's face it, to demand unconditional acceptance and desire from anyone can only mean one thing. You might be looking for someone to accept you like your mother did. You're looking to the heavens to find you love, not you, to the heavens. It has to be there. You seek the mythical unconditional love you believe is necessary for your existence. You may even want to crawl back into mama's arms and have her gaze at you fondly, at your countenance. You want to suckle maybe at her tit to sustain you in your helplessness. And so off you go out into the world where you meet women, and in your confusion, you look to confirm and validate your emotional neediness. You latch on to the idea that, hey, attraction isn't negotiable, because after all, this matches your internal need to be loved unconditionally. It says, if you can't love me like mom did, forget about it. And the gurus insist that you demand she's either all in or she's all out. So you seize upon this as an essential truth, forgetting completely that with adults, it's necessity and reciprocity which drives our interdependence, not a spark from the heavens. So here's where the idea completely falls down. If a man finds a woman who is smitten with him, what happens when after a few years, this lightning bolt of desire hits her again, only with somebody else? What then? What if the same thing happens to you? Can't negotiate desire? Nonsense. You can see how this dumb little platitude can quickly go right the fuck off the rails. But first, let's look at how typically men and women get together. Women typically self-assess up against their peers and rate themselves pretty effectively. She also has an idea of what she's looking for out of life at a much earlier age than most men. When she's ready, she selects a man she thinks matches or slightly exceeds her self-assessment from within her environment. She signals him, sometimes through others, and he hopefully notices her. Then the mating dance ensues. He, on the other hand, is attracted by her looks, responding to her hip to waist ratio, which is king, and her encouragement. Usually, but not always, he chases her until she catches him. He acquiesces to her selection because for the most part, women do the choosing. So here's the thing. To believe desire cannot be negotiated is to say courtship doesn't matter. All that doesn't matter. This is the period of time where two people get to know each other and test each other's suitability. Whatever happened to when people say, well, he kind of grew on me, and now we've been together 20 years. Or when he says, the more I got to know her, the more I came to believe in her goodness. So I married her. What about that? And what about arranged marriages? Often they're even more successful than our Western versions. One of the men I work with is fed up with the dating scene in Europe. So he recently rekindled his relationship with his father and allowed his dad to introduce him to an eligible woman 1,000 miles away. They see each other only by phone and Zoom, and they have ups and downs. A few months later, they end their calls now with "I love you." Attraction, which was not there or even possible, has now become attachment. It's been negotiated. When you buy into something as trite as you can't negotiate desire, you are hard bargaining. You're like the person who says, take it or leave it, with no room for discussion, zero flexibility. Now, the Harvard negotiation project of the 1970s changed our views of negotiation, but the word has been slow to get out to the game-dominated manosphere, apparently. Mature negotiation uses principles, not positions. The problem with bargaining over positions is that most people go either soft or hard. Excuse the pun. Soft negotiators make concessions to make a deal, and they avoid fights at all costs. They often end up being exploited and feeling bitter in a classic nice guy fashion. Hard negotiators, on the other hand, they want to win. So they see negotiation as a contest of wills, which being a hard ass and holding out is better. Unfortunately, longer term, they often lose the relationship with the other side as well. The problem with each of these two types of approaches is the same. They're positional, and usually a sequence of positions, one hard ass or one deemed weak. And however it goes down, positional bargaining creates a win or lose game, exactly what it shouldn't be. And the alternative, of course, is principled negotiation, because hard or soft positional bargaining doesn't mean successful bargaining, which is defined as this: producing a wise and efficient agreement which doesn't damage the relationship between parties. Don't you think you'd start relationships better off on that basis? Hard bargaining doesn't make for satisfactory or long-lasting love either, because successful relationships are based on win-win, not on hard or soft positions. That's why women will have the talk with a man after a period of dating. What are your plans for us? She might say. She wants to know. She has interests. For example, most women are irresistibly attracted to power in a man. She's looking for someone with the balls to leave his group, the courage to step up and perhaps create a new tribe with her. She has interests which she needs met. She has a list with boxes beside it, which each one needing to be checked off. And women are pros at this. She has probably been looking at the options since the moment she laid her eyes on you. She usually sees a man's potential long before he even sees it in himself. Listen, I have personal experience from this. I lived in a 2-bedroom condo with my gal in a platonic relationship for several months. I used to fly in and out of town, stay for a couple of days, go back, till one day after a few months, she suggested that we make use of the downstairs pool and hot tub. I agreed to go along. I thought, well, that'd be fine. And after a few times like this, I made an offhand comment about her pink bikini. We went on a date about 2 weeks later, and we've been together ever since. And it's been 15 years. And then we have an 8 and a 10-year-old. I had no real money, but I was a capable man, and our attraction was all negotiated. It was the result of carefully assessing each other's needs and slowly but surely over several months of checking each other out. What would you do in this situation? How about that situation? What about this? What about that? Finally, we fell for each other. And most of the successful relationships I encounter are with people who grew on each other over time, who assessed what they were gaining and what they could give, and they made a decision to love each other. And that alone is a grand testimony to man's adaptability, because I believe that a man can learn to love just about anybody he sets his mind to. If you are set on an island with one woman, you're not going to negotiate attraction and desire? Of course you will. So you could say, well, there's plenty of fish in the sea, Wally. But even if you say no today, chances are eventually you will say yes. The UN says 90% of men are married off and are fathers by the time they're 49. If you can't negotiate interests, what does that say about your ability to lead? If you can't lead your woman with love, how will you ever lead a family? To default to the silly notion of you can't negotiate desire is also defeatist. It's starting off by saying you will stick around as long as you receive unconditional love. Man, this isn't going to cut it, guys. It's like the little boy who insists on his mother's care. It's game. It's a remnant of boyhood, unconsciously looking for his mother in others. He seeks to climb back inside. It's the addicted lover craving the safety in the darkness of the womb. And on this one, I'm afraid, gentlemen, there is no going back. To buy into this desire can't be negotiated means you are saying your destiny with others lies in the heavens, in the stars, maybe. And of course, that's a poetic way to characterize the mysteries between us. It's beautiful, and men are the poets, I agree. But mark my words, wanting brings suffering. 18th century philosopher Schopenhauer said desire was the source of most of our unhappiness. And the only way out of misery was through compassion for people, to see in each other what is special. Just as we celebrate great music or great art, celebrate life. When you have compassion for yourself, you gain it for others. And when you have compassion for others, you gain it for yourself. In my view, as soon as you want, you must contend with not getting, like a child who didn't get the right toy at Christmas. I've been there. Better you keep your wits about you, knowing you can choose to adapt in any circumstance. Listen, here's another truism from the Advisor to Man. We don't become men until we reverse the flow, until we realize that we possess a reserve of love and power within us, and it's up to us to dial it out in service of ourselves and others as a pathway to meaning and freedom. Seek to love and not to be loved first. Have that kind of courage. You own three things in life, brothers: your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Don't let anybody else control those. Think of the implications of implementing somebody else's rules. Make yourself powerful. Trust me, women will find you. Better you sweep your side of the street first and know what you want, so that you have a firm grasp on what interests you have, on your interests, and settle only for relationships which are win-win. Last little bit of wisdom. If happiness is mostly a decision, then for the most part, so is love. And in the meantime, stop listening to people who tell you that you can't do something. Of course you can. Thanks for listening. Once again, Chris Wallace here. Please find me at advisortomen.com, where you can join the board of directors if you like. Stand with other men each week in mutual support online and help each other's quest to live better lives. I'll leave a link in the description if you like. If this helps you, you're welcome to subscribe and leave a comment as well. Until next time, again, stay powerful, true, and free.